Hello everyone, welcome to the Green Effect podcast. This is episode number 28, and we've got the incredibly interesting and just really insightful guest, Phil Gorman from Cranial Waves, joining us. But before we get to Phil, I wanted to let everyone know that this is being cross-posted through Ignite Volleyball Club, our sponsor, mainly because of the topic around health, nutrition. We even talk about posture. So there's so many great topics here that both the volleyball community as well as, of course, our regular listeners can benefit from and enjoy. So on that note, our sponsor, Ignite Volleyball Club, hey, registration is open right now for our youth programs between the ages of 4 and 12. They're open for the fall right now. Awesome program, lots of fun for the kids. If you haven't seen it, there's some great demo videos on the website. Visit ignitevolleyball.ca for all the details. And on to Phil Gorman of Cranial Waves. So again, Phil, really interesting guy. He is a massage therapist, osteopath. You're going to find out some other cool things that he does too. We're going to talk about his travels in the East. So we're going to talk about Qigong, the Lahus. If you don't know who they are, wait till you hear about it. And we talked about a potential place that I might want to go for vacation. And then when he told me that I'd be sleeping in a banana leaf hut with ants on me and a big spider, you're going to find out why I kind of decided to pass on that option. We're going to talk about downtown Kitchener. So he is a downtown Kitchener guy. And he's got an interesting outlook on how he sees it, how he's grown his business there. He lives there, right? So he is definitely your pedestrian traffic kind of guy. And then we're going to talk about not disciplines that he works in, but they're called modalities. And 2 of the 3 we're going to talk about on this part 1 of 2. And the first one is Cranial Sacral Therapy, and the other one is Somato Emotional Release, otherwise known as S.E.R. So some great therapies, a lot of items that cross over into volleyball world, and I know you'll enjoy this show. Without further ado, on to Phil.
Welcome to the Green Effect Podcast. Finance, life, business, and everything in between. And now, your host, Stephen Green.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Green Effect Podcast. This time around, we've got Phil Gorman with Cranial Waves. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you for having me, Stephen.
My pleasure. So I wanted to have you on. Now, briefly, give me what is your official, I don't know if it's a title, but what is your discipline, we'll say?
Sure. Well, I can give you my title. Here in Ontario, I am a registered massage therapist. That is my professional title. But I specialize in cranial sacral therapy. And I'm sure you want to know what cranial sacral therapy is all about, right?
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
Don't tell them yet, because then they'll just stop the podcast, okay?
Yeah.
Now, you do treat my wife, Tracy, and I know she's been seeing you for, probably a couple of years now.
Yep.
And I know she comes home with just so much praise for what you do for her and stuff. So I wanted to have you on, and I think the other part of it is most of our listeners probably at some point have found out that I'm a club director here in town with Ignite Volleyball Club. Shameless plugs are all good on this show. But we're going to cross-pollinate that. I don't know if that's right, but we're going to do that through our volleyball social media as well, because I think there's some really neat things about youth and sports and stuff like that. So if anyone has any questions on that, ignitevolleyball.ca is the website. Okay. First one we ask everybody. I think we kind of already covered this one off, but we pretty much met because of what you do with my wife.
Yeah,
absolutely. So that was easy. Next. Okay, so tell me about your path in business, career. I've heard some of it, but tell me how you ended up doing this instead of being a math teacher.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I always knew that I wanted to be of service in some sort of fashion. I grew up in rural New Brunswick, and I knew that I didn't want to live in rural New Brunswick forever. And I saw education as a way out for me. I just thought there was just so much more. So I did go to university right out of high school, and I did an undergraduate degree in arts and psychology, which was amazing, which actually opened up a lot of doors. But it wasn't quite exactly what I was looking for. It was pretty theoretical in nature, and I was kind of looking for something a little bit more practical. So after quite a few years of traveling, I traveled overseas quite a few times. I spent a year in Australia backpacking, which was incredible, eye-opener.
That would be incredible.
Most of Australasia I traveled through. And then I had my own injuries. I had my own bout of like plantar fasciitis. I was running on beaches. I was just, given a lot and wasn't really restoring my body. So I went to this amazing massage therapist in Australia, and I was like, after having this experience and seeing this person like 6 or 8 times, I was like, it wasn't even on my radar. And I was like, I wonder if they have massage therapists in Canada. Funny enough, right? And I was like, of course they do. So when I returned back to Canada, I went to a few different schools and had interviews and talked to these people and figured that, man, this sounded like a really, really cool opportunity. And already having a really positive experience, it seemed like a natural way to go. And also seemed like a natural way to sort of integrate my people skills and my psychology background and all of that stuff. So I ended up going and graduating from a school in Halifax and started practicing in Halifax right after that. After a few years of practice, I felt like I needed a break and I felt like I needed more. So I went traveling again. I traveled to Taiwan for a year and taught English as a second language there.
How was that? Because I've heard of people doing that.
It was a brilliant experience. I did my research. I found a school they call it a Bushiban school, so it was an after-school school. And yeah, wow, what a great experience. Culturally, it was a great experience. The work experience was great too. I heard lots of horror stories before I went, and so I was like, what's going to be lost in translation? This school did a really great job, Gloria English School, and they have 12, at that point, 12 schools within the county. And they also had English liaisons between the foreign teachers and the Chinese teachers, which was really helpful.
Yeah.
Great culture, made tons of cash.
They pay very well.
They paid really well.
And living expenses too, I believe.
Living expenses,
right? Yeah.
You fill your contract, they pay for your flight over and back, they pay for your medical insurance, they pay for my accommodation for a year. It was great.
Right, that's good.
Plus a lot of US dollars on top of that, which is great.
Good. Hopefully it was around when it wasn't the American peso, it was the
No,
actual strong American dollar,
it was
right?
Strong
Yeah.
American dollar, which allowed me then after that to travel through Southeast Asia for 3 months. To continue my studies. One of the reasons I went there was to continue my studies of learning about the human body. And I was always drawn towards these Eastern philosophies, and China in particular, through martial arts, because I've trained in martial arts for many years, through Qigong, through Chinese medicine, and all these things. So I did study Qigong with, there's a great story about an old guy that I just met. He didn't speak English. I didn't speak Chinese really very well. I always saw him practicing at this temple every day that I was at this school. So I got one of my co-teachers to introduce me to this guy. And he said he would take me on as a student. And I went and I trained with him every morning.
Now let's back up a sec. What is Qigong?
Qigong, it actually is intermingled with Chinese medicine, and it's a physical, energetic, spiritual practice. The direct translation means qi, energy, gong, which means play. So essentially playing with energetics through movement. I would say it's comparable to yoga without,
Yeah.
in its philosophy. It's very holistic.
Neat. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I went and trained with this guy every day, and wow, I got a real eye-opening experience of meditation and movement and really slowing down. So after that, I left, and I ended up going to Thailand to study Thai massage.
Okay.
So I lived up in the mountains in Chiang Rai County, which is like north of Chiang Mai, with a group of people called the Lahus. And the Lahus originally came from India back in the day, and they were a nomadic tribe that when Thailand set up their borders, they were forced to settle in that area. So they stayed there up in the mountains. So they were farmers. Ashokananda, who was the man that I studied with, who's a German Buddhist monk, ended up marrying a woman from this tribe, and he ended up having his school there. So he had this really authentic experience. He lived on the side of a mountain, rice, veggie, local meals 3 times a day. You lived in banana leaf huts on the side of the mountain. It was just quite an amazing regime. Up every morning before the sun came up, you would hike to the top of the mountain, an hour and a half of seated meditation, followed by an hour and a half of yoga, followed by walking back down the mountain.
And how long did you do this for?
I went back twice because I was so blown away by it, and it was 30 days each time that I went.
Wow. So is this something they do for anybody? Like anyone can kind of pay to go and do it, sort of thing?
Yep. Ashokananda is no longer with us. Unfortunately, he had a motorcycle accident and died.
Okay.
But I believe that his lineage continues.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very good. I'm just trying to plan a trip because Tracy won't fly, right? So I've always tried to.
It may not be Tracy friendly.
No, I don't think so either. The flight or the thing, I don't know.
I lived on a little rice mat, and they were constantly like ants were running over your body.
Okay, that's actually not my thing either.
I had like a friendly spider who used to he was big, about the size of my hand. He was directly over top of my bed, and he literally moved like a foot back and forth between night and day, and because he was just eating. He was just like this big happy spider.
I'm okay with little spiders because they kill other things, but no, big over my head. Yeah, no, I'm good with that. Never mind. Okay, I was thinking it might be a plan, but yeah, forget it. We're good.
Maybe stay in a nice hotel.
I bet. I think so too. Oh boy. So sorry. Go on.
Yeah. So that experience was amazing. I returned back to Canada with that newfound knowledge and experience of holistic medicine, and actually being a little bit more knowledgeable about that. Mm-hmm. Studying with some incredible people along the way. And then, so I was back in Halifax and started a practice up there again. And then met my incredible wife, Julie Hare. And so Jules and I then, from there, went to China, because this was one of my tests for her. It was like, I wonder if we can travel together. This is one of I was like, because I was married before Jules.
Yeah.
Right? And then when I got divorced, I was like, wow, this is like a second chance at life to be completely authentically me. Because I made choices in the past based on what I thought that I should do, and just old morals and values and beliefs and truths that they didn't really serve me, but I didn't question them at the time.
This is actually a whole different podcast.
Yeah,
because I've been married once before too.
Exactly,
and
right?
Tracy has been married once before, and I joke that was our test marriage. And listen, I don't want to get into
best rebound
a debate
ever,
on
right?
that. All right, the guest said it, not me. I like that, but yeah, it's what you just said. Yes, yeah, I get it. Absolutely.
So I was like, there are no compromises this time. I really spent some time doing my own work, working through my own crap, trying to be as clear as possible, and then this amazing light came into my life. And we've been together ever since, highly committed. I don't even have to think about it. It's just incredible. It frees up a lot of headspace to do everything else that I want to do in my life.
Not having to everything is work, I think, from a relationship perspective, but not hard, difficult work. It's work in a different light.
The communication is just like up here, right?
Yeah.
So when that happens, then I was like, wow, this is really special. And so we went traveling together. We went to mainland China at this time. Not the exact same experience that I had in Taiwan. The Chinese want you to work harder for less money and be available all the time. So we did that for a bit, and then it was time to leave. We stayed there for 6 months, and then we left with, again, another incredible experience. Julie's mom, who's in a similar business to us, said, you need to come back here to Kitchener. I'm thinking about retiring. Julie's always been she's in the same business that I am, and she's been working with her mom forever. Her mom's been in the business for 40 years, doing cranial sacral therapy.
So she's seen a lot of stuff then, I'm
yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
evolution,
She's a physio OT, and she's kind of been in that world forever.
OT, occupational therapist.
Occupational therapist, yeah. Back when they put those two things together, now they're separated. But with Julie and I, we just decided to move back here and to give it a try. I mean, I was here in the transition going to China, and I really liked it. And I was out on my bike every day on the trails and all that stuff. And there was a flavor to Kitchener, and I was like, I kind of like this flavor to Kitchener.
Now, when was this?
It was in 2004.
Okay, so what was the flavor you're talking about? And the reason why I ask is Kitchener's changed a lot. And
yeah.
Actually, ironically enough, 2004 is when I moved here.
Okay.
Because I'm a Toronto boy.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about when you say the flavor?
Just all the characters. Like, her mom lived downtown or close to downtown, and so it was always downtown. And I was like, what's going on in this downtown? Like, why are there so many random things happening, seemingly unstable people talking to themselves and all this other stuff? And it looks like kind of like a ghost town. And it looks like it's in shambles, but everybody's talking about Kitchener. And I'm like, what's going on here? Soon after that, they did a total facelift on it. Like, when I came back in 2005, that's when I think they started to implement that new downtown streetscape and tried to really sort of beef it all up and make it look nice and stuff. The flavor was still there with a new street.
Yeah, and a little bit, we'll say renovated.
Sure. Yeah,
I don't want to say
updated.
cleaned up because there's still some stuff, right? But
I mean, I think there'll always be some stuff there just because of how Kitchener has decided to support all the mental health and the immigration population and all of that stuff, which I think makes Kitchener really, really special.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, as you know, I had the mayors on, and we were talking about this because I think I used to be the manager at a different bank that's blue in downtown, and that was always the debate where it seems like all those programs are in the downtown of Kitchener, and it gets to the point where it's like, okay, I know not all those people who need those services are in Kitchener. What about Waterloo? What about Cambridge? What about New Hamburg? Whatever, right? Yeah. So you're right. It's all right there.
It's pretty saturated.
Yeah, and it's a good and a bad thing for people, right?
For people visiting, they just don't understand it.
No.
But for people who live there, I see these characters in my life every day.
Yeah.
They don't bother me. Like, they got their own stuff going on.
Yeah.
Right? I think maybe the biggest shift is when they put the courthouse in on Duke Street.
The new one?
Yeah, the new one.
Oh, yes, yeah.
That one's, I think, shifted things more than anything, in the sense that now you've got everybody who has their day in court there, and they don't have their stuff when they leave there. They don't have any money. They don't have anything, and then they just melt into the fabric of Kitchener.
Yeah.
Which I think that is really the part for me that makes it just a bit sketchy. The rest of it, I get the mental health stuff, I get the we're from different cultures stuff, but I don't always get the stuff where we have to harm other people because we're in a tough situation. I just don't get that part.
And I mean, you've kept your business in downtown Kitchener.
Correct.
Why? Because I'm sure you could
because I lived there.
Okay. You live there right now still?
Yeah, and my thing is, and I told Jules this right from the get-go, I was like, so we're moving to Ontario, and that's fine, but I can't be like the rest of people in Ontario getting in their car and driving an hour to work and an hour back and sitting on the 401 and doing, even to Cambridge. I'm like, no way, no way.
Sitting on Highway 8.
I wanna walk to work, and I don't want to be any more than 20 minutes. Right? It's just,
for you.
You have to, when you work for yourself, when you have your own business, you have to design it so it works for you.
Absolutely.
So that's what we did. So Jules and I share a space. We have an office and we share a space because we wanted to also design a lifestyle for our kids.
How old are your kids?
My kids are 10 and 12.
10 and
13.
12. Boys, girls?
The boy is the oldest, Hayden. He's 13, and Tara is 10.
Okay, so you're like Tracy and I. Ours are a little bit older, but we have older boy, younger girl.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Never a dull moment, eh?
So, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but we've been there to support them. And we don't have to, like, again, like the prices that people are paying for having somebody take care of their kid before and after school and all this stuff. Like, well, I understand why people in Ontario, mom and dad are both working. And I'm like, whoa, that's not what I grew up with. There was always somebody at home, right, that you had to be accountable to. So,
And that's another podcast.
yeah, exactly. That's another podcast right there.
How things have changed.
Yeah.
And listen, our kids they're my stepkids. I met them when they were 5 and 7. I call them my kids because I consider them my kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny how the family dynamic has also changed. So when you bring up stuff like this, some people call it, maybe old-fashioned or maybe even progressive. But in the same breath, I think the kids will benefit from that. And everyone's situation is different. That's not where I'm going with this. But it's interesting how things have just changed and evolved and stuff that. So
yeah. So that's why we made Cranial Waves downtown. It was that simple reason, and I don't regret it at all. It's incredible.
It's good. And you've seen a lot of changes down there, and obviously your business is prospering. So it's great to see.
Yeah,
really
it's definitely evolving.
Yeah, and I think you're also a little bit away from anything that's been construction zone-ish. Like you're a little bit off that beaten path, which is a good thing, right?
Close. Yeah,
you're kind of close to the LRT, but not
close to the expressway.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
So tell me more about, and I know there's kind of three. There's three. Is it called disciplines? Is that the right term?
Sure, or therapies or whatever.
Things you
I don't
do.
know. People don't like the word therapy. Modalities. Let's call them modalities.
Modality. Okay,
Sure.
I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, modalities.
Modality. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's three.
Yeah.
Cranial Sacral Therapy, Somato Emotional Release. I want to hear about that one. And then the one that's very volleyball spin like is the kinesiotaping, right? Is that how you pronounce it?
Sure. Kinesiotaping.
Yeah. So because that's become a big thing in volleyball,
Right.
Because of Carrie Walsh, USA Volleyball beach star. I mean, she's on the packaging now, right?
Right.
So we'll come back to that one. But tell me about cranial sacral therapy, because that's what you do with Tracy, right?
Yeah. So cranial sacral has to do with. It's an osteopathic technique. Okay, so it's very gentle in nature, and it has to do with accessing the fluid dynamics, which we call the fluid of life, within the central nervous system. So whether you realize it or not, your central nervous system has a pump, and this pumps this cerebral spinal fluid through the brain and through the spinal cord at a rhythm that depends on you. So
And
approximately 6 to 15 rhythms per minute.
And how do we impact that?
So
If
the
you say
way
it
the
depends
way that
on
it
us.
shows up for me is I'm feeling for cranial bones, and I'm feeling for movement within the bone system and how it expands and contracts. Okay? And then based on those fluid dynamics, you can then make an impact on the rest of the system. And it's oftentimes just bringing people's awareness to whatever's happening in their body at the time. And that's oftentimes the change, is people being aware of their own patterns and habits, and then creating a new healthy pattern and habit to insert in there after you've become aware that you're doing something. So awareness is
laying off carbs at lunch.
yeah, awareness is key. I know this makes me feel not so good for 3 hours after. It makes me a little bit cranky. So you told me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the awareness piece. It's up to each individual how many times you have to struggle with the awareness piece before you actually do something about it.
Yeah.
But most humans will go, yeah, I see the value in doing this, especially as we age.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got it. So what is osteopathy? Explain that.
So
one to me.
osteopathic medicine originally came from Europe, and they called them bone doctors. And these doctors have a really holistic view of the human body. They understand how it moves. They understand the bone structure. They understand all the systems. So it was a very holistic approach. This is just one of those modalities that they use. I mean, I use other modalities that they use, like lymphatic drainage, visceral or organ manipulation, all of that stuff, neurological manipulation. it goes along with it. Yeah.
Okay.
And so does the S.E.R that you were talking about, the Somato Emotional Release.
Yeah, so great segue. Go into that one then.
Yeah, so Somato Emotional Release is just something that seemingly happens in the moment. So again, if indeed we are 100 trillion cells, okay, my experience is, and what my research tells me, is that every cell in your body has a memory. We have a cellular memory bank, okay? Sometimes we hold on to those things. Example, you smell something and it triggers a feeling or an emotion from the past.
I'm bad like that. Sounds and smells.
Right.
Bad. Quote,
So
bad.
so just different senses that we have trigger certain experiences, take us back.
Yep.
So for some people that's the case. When they're moving through a traumatic situation, they can all of a sudden go, whoa, I'm back in that traumatic situation. Right? And then it shows up sometimes in people's bodies. Usually when their body starts to release, because my idea is, what I do is I create a safe framework for people to let whatever comes to the surface. Mm-hmm. And I always assure people that your body will not allow more than you can process to come to the surface. You just need to know that. You need to trust that. Don't be overwhelmed by it, but the reality is this could happen. And it does often happen. Your body sometimes goes into this shaking or tremoring feeling. Mm-hmm. Because what's happened when you were traumatized is you froze. Just like if you've ever seen an animal that's gotten hit by a car or whatever, they freeze. Mm-hmm. Or they've been attacked by another animal, they freeze. It's a natural biological response to trauma.
Mm-hmm. And that's the body protecting itself, basically.
Yeah, it's
right?
like taking stock of everything. It's just the humans that get up and go, oh, does anybody see me do that? Right? And they're like, oh, ego, right? But the animals don't do that.
Yeah.
But it comes up. And so people need to realize that shaking is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of your body being safe, and it's allowing itself to release that trauma. It's just a way to release trauma. It's not something to be fearful of. It's just, we're always told to like keep yourself together and don't shake and don't let them see you, whatever, right?
Now how does this, and if I'm butchering this, it's because I kind of relate to other things. So how does this relate to fight or flight response? Like, are these two things linked?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So when we are in fight or flight mode, or our nervous system is ramped up, things get a little bit, jumbled up. Like, we don't really know how to respond to things. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like the opposite of that. Your body has allowed itself to drop into parasympathetic mode, which is the opposite of sympathetic, right? So it's rest and digest mode. So I'm interested in taking the body into rest and digest mode. And when it goes into that rest and digest mode, it allows itself to release that trauma.
Interesting. Okay.
Instead of being up in your head and like la 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 la, cortisol la 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 la, it drops down into you, and your body goes, oh. And then all of a sudden, whoa, some people get teary-eyed and, like, oh, I don't know why this is happening. No, we don't know why. Mm-hmm. The brain always wants to put it in a little tiny box and make sense of it. But the reality is that healing is this magical thing that happens with the right environment, with the right amount of attention. Mm-hmm. And it's not about me. I'm just a facilitator of that, where I take people deeper into an understanding and a knowing of themselves, because it's not my trauma.
So if I can bring this full circle, is this something that could help someone? Let me give some examples. They have had something happen to them, a car accident. Or let me relate now to the athlete side. They've been in a situation where they underperform in championship matches. Like, are these the type of things that this could possibly address?
Absolutely.
Because you're talking about awareness, right?
Yeah. And you're also trying to set a new standard for yourself too. So you're trying to move through your old stuff, which can be restrictive, right? I did this last time that this did this. I'm afraid that this is going to happen again. I hear this stuff all the time. Yeah. Because if you're afraid that it's going to happen again, it's going to happen again.
And it's going to impact how
it's going to impact your performance,
your health.
Yeah, absolutely, it's going to impact everything. So it really has to come down to choosing to change your approach to those things, and engaging and not being fearful of your experience, and knowing that you put that effort in and you put that presence with your own body in, which we weren't taught, by the way, how to do these things. That's why I have to talk people through this stuff. If it gets to a point where I feel like this is beyond my scope of practice, I refer on to somebody who's down with that stuff and it needs a little deeper. So I'm often the one that brings things to the surface for whatever reason. I'm that catalyst for that stuff. Yeah. Some things you can easily work through. Some things you're like, wow. So it's been like 5 treatments now and you keep hitting the same barrier and wall each time. Would you be up for seeing this other person who I trust, who can possibly move us in, through this and
move us forward?
And move us forward, right?
Yeah.
And most people are up for that, and they really respect that. So
that is fascinating. I didn't know that was part and parcel of it. So that's because it
just happens. It's on my website.
Yeah.
And it's there for a particular reason. It's not something that I do. It's just something that I apply when things come up. I do have people who specifically call me for that, and I'm like, okay, what are these people looking for, right?
Yeah.
And then we get into deeper sort of understanding of that because it resonates with them.
Yeah, and I think as humans, I think we... Listen, I grew up in an Italian household, so you can't get much more stereotypical than that with don't cry, don't let your emotions out, pack it away.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm there. I'm there with it. Maybe I am that old-fashioned kind of guy. So when I hear stuff like this, I'm thinking, yeah, okay, I can see parts of my life. Not only as in my own business, but as a volleyball coach as well, where I know previous, call them trauma experiences, whatever, are probably impacting decisions, health, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So I often said knock on wood. I'm not going to knock on wood right now because of the microphone, but I've been successful at volleyball, but it's because I have a fear of losing. There is this fear, and it's a motivating fear, I think, but I have such a fear of ever losing at anything relative to volleyball. I would never be unprepared for a match or a project or whatever the case may be. So it's interesting how we've all been molded that way based on stuff, right? Yeah. So, very interesting. There you go. Part 1 of 2 with Phil Gorman from Cranial Waves. Make sure you listen to Part 2, episode 29. We're going to be talking about kineso taping. That has become a fashion statement, believe me. His new business, Tonics Seed Oil. We're going to talk a lot about that. And for the business side of things, we're going to talk about being a triple bottom line guy and how that really means going for quality over quantity. Don't forget to follow us on both Facebook and Twitter, RBC Stephen Green, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Green Effect Podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Google Play so you catch the next episode. And don't forget to leave a review. Much appreciated.